Hey there, welcome into the show. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles Now. Chase Senior here with you. Coming up, I want to talk about a huge problem with this Eagles offense, and it's a problem and an issue that's been lingering all year that nobody saw coming this season here in 2025. Before we get to all of that, a reminder, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We're 22 subscribers away from 138,000 right here on the channel. Hope you're all getting set to have a great Thanksgiving. We'll be live for a watch party on Black Friday for Eagles-Bears, monster game inside the NFC. Don't waste time shopping on Black Friday. Do it online from the crib and hang out with us here on Philadelphia Eagles Now. And let's get the show underway. So last year, en route to the Eagles winning their second Super Bowl since 2017 and dominating their way through the playoffs for the most part, the Eagles put together a special regular season and an unforgettable playoff run where they had one of the best rushing seasons in the history of the National Football League. And it started with the big boys up front and how Howie Roseman likes to build his team, investing along the line and in the trenches. He will put a lot of money toward the offensive line and the defensive line. And there's a saying out there among people who follow football closely that sometimes you watch the game from the sideline. And when you watch the game from the sideline, you don't watch where the ball goes. You watch the line of scrimmage. Is the offensive line able to get a push? Or is the defensive line able to get a push? And last year, it was the Eagles offensive line that was dominant. They were mauling. They were physical. They took the opponent's souls. They wore teams down throughout the course of a ball game, and they played bully ball, which is what we love in the city of brotherly love. Broad Street Bullies, baby. Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, Mekhi Becton, Lane Johnson, a star-studded cast up front of 5 offensive linemen for the Eagles. And you think about all those players, right? Jordan Mailata last year, one of the highest graded offensive tackles in the sport. He landed a lofty contract extension. Landon Dickerson, one of the best left guards in the game. He too is on a second contract and a huge contract extension, which made him at the time one of the highest paid guards in football. Cam Jurgens this past offseason, after winning the Super Bowl and fighting through that back injury in the NFC Championship game and in the Super Bowl, he got a contract which made him, average annual value-wise, highest paid center in the NFL at the time. Mekhi Becton, a phenomenal player at that right guard spot. He goes to the Chargers. He got a 2-year, $20 million deal. And Lane Johnson, he's gotten multiple contract extensions with the Eagles and might go down as the best right tackle of all time and arguably the best player in the history of this Eagles organization. So resume-wise, when you turn on the tape, when you look at the numbers and you look at their contracts, that offensive line is fantastic, or at least was. And running behind that offensive line was Saquon Barkley, who had one of the best, if not the best, single-season rushing performances that we've ever seen when you combine regular season and the playoffs. He broke the record for the most rushing yards in the regular season and postseason combined, taking down Eric Dickerson and Terrell Davis's previous mark. Eric Dickerson was the regular season mark. And when you go back and you look at Saquon Barkley's numbers last year, it was silly what he was able to do. 1 offensive player of the year. He was top 5 in MVP voting. He was a first-team All-Pro. And when I gauge MVP candidates, I think he should have won it. Because if you were to take that player away from that team, how would that team fare? The Eagles without Saquon are not winning the Super Bowl. The Eagles without Saquon do not have an identity. He led the NFL in touches with 345 in the regular season. He ran for 2,005 yards, 13 touchdowns. He averaged 125.3 rushing yards per game. And of course, he was a threat as a receiver, 33 grabs for 278 yards and 2 touchdowns. In the playoffs, he was also an incredibly dominant player. And you think back to Saquon's game log, right? It was on a regular basis that Saquon was going over 100 yards seemingly every single week. Packers week 1, 109 yards. Atlanta week 2, 95. Saints week 3, 147. Tampa Bay week 4, 84. Against Cleveland, week 5, 47. Against the Giants, 176. Cincinnati, 108. Jacksonville, 159. Dallas, 66. Washington, 146. Rams, 255, 2 touchdowns of 60-plus yards. Baltimore, 107. Carolina, 124. Pittsburgh, 65. Washington, 150. Dallas, 167. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games in which Saquon did not surpass at least 100 yards rushing. And one of those games, he ran for 95. And then in the playoffs, after he rested in week 16, or the final game of the season, week 18, obviously, if you would have played that game against his former team, I think you would have set the regular season record for rushing yards in a single season. The Eagles rest him up for a playoff run because they did not get that first round bye. And Saquon carried this team to the Big Easy in New Orleans for Super Bowl 59. And the amount of iconic plays he had in the regular season and postseason, we'll never forget that. Against Green Bay in the wild card round, 25 totes for $119. Against the Rams, 2 long legendary touchdowns, 26 carries for 205 yards, and those 2 tuds. Against Washington, NFC Championship game, 15 carries for $118, 3 touchdowns, including on the first play from scrimmage, a 60-yard house call. And then in the Super Bowl, 25 carries for 57 yards, but the Eagles' pass game opened up in that game for Jalen Hurts and everybody else because the Chiefs loaded the box. They went all out, selling out, trying to stop the run. They would not let Saquon Barkley beat the Eagles, and so that opened up the pass game for Hurts and this offense. And because Saquon posed the threat that he did, that's why the offense was able to be successful in the Super Bowl. That's having an impact beyond the box score. Last year, Saquon had 7 rushing plays of 40 or more rushing yards in the regular season. And then in the playoffs, he had 3 rushing plays of 40 or more yards. And all of those touchdowns were of 60-plus yards. Or all of those 3 rushing plays of 40 or more were for 60 or more. And so you think about how great Saquon was in 2024, how dominant this offensive line was in 2024. Going into this year, we thought the strength, the backbone, the foundation, the anchor of this ball club at the very least was going to be this offensive line. Obviously, Mekhi Becton went to the Chargers, but Tyler Steen has been solid. Has he been dominant? No. Has he been great? No. Better as a pass blocker than a run blocker, and he's not the road grader and mauler that Becton is, but he's been fine. But we thought that with him playing alongside everybody else, the one constant, the one strength that the Eagles could lean on was running the football. But this season, which has surprised everybody, and no fan thought this was coming, the Eagles have been one of the worst rushing teams in the National Football League. And let me just pull up their running rankings real quick before we get to more numbers. They are 19th. Check that. They are 25th in yards per rush. They are 8th in rushes per game. They're still trying to run it. 28 carries a ball game, but 25th in yards per rush. They are 21st in rushing yards per game at 110.5. And there has been a massive lacking of explosive plays. And the overall production for Saquon has been missing. This season, Saquon Barkley has 1 game of 100 or more rushing yards and 1 run of 65 or more yards. The game over 100 and that lone run coming against that Giants team the second go-around right before the bye week. And so you compare Saquon's numbers through the first 12 weeks last year compared to this year. Last year, weeks 1 through 12, 279 carries, 1,550 yards, 10 rushing touchdowns, yards per carry, 5.6. This year, carries are down 185, rushing yards 684 compared to 1,550 a year ago. only has 4 rushing touchdowns compared to the 10. And ladies and gentlemen, his yards per carry are down nearly 2 yards. So the rushing attempts, the difference is 94. The rushing yards, the difference is 866. The touchdowns, the difference is 6, and the yards per carry, 1.9. Again, those are the rushing numbers first 12 weeks last year compared to the first 12 weeks this year, as the Eagles are 8-3, and they've already had their bye. So those numbers are not even close. And so a lot of people are wondering, is this a Saquon Barkley issue? I don't think so. I think that Saquon has looked explosive. I think that Saquon has looked fast. I think that Saquon has looked very similarly to the player who he was last year. Now, some people are going to ask, Chase, should the Eagles run Tank Bigsby more? I would run Tank Bigsby a little bit more because he's a physical back who is more of a north-south guy. And when the offensive line is struggling, sometimes you give it to a bulldozing, physical downhill back. And whether there is a hole there or not to run through, he's going to be able to pick up positive yardage to get this offense at least going a little bit. And one of the biggest problems for the Eagles has been playing behind the sticks, whether it be because of penalties or losses as far as some of these carries go. So I would sprinkle in Tank Bigsby a little bit more. But Saquon's been going up against a lot of heavy boxes. Tank Bigsby has not. And so if Tank Bigsby does get a lot of carries, what are teams going to do? They're also going to load the box, because when he's also on the field, it's a telltale sign that the Eagles are going to run it. But I do think that this offense could benefit from changing it up at least a little bit with their approach as far as who gets carries. At least test that out to see. Because in the limited time that Bigsby's been able to play, I will say he's been pretty damn impressive. But why I think this is an offensive line problem are some of the numbers that I've been talking about all season long. Nick Sirianni also said today, I think that Saquon looks every bit of being the explosive and fast back that's made him a great player in this league. And I agree. Now, I will say, against the Dallas Cowboys, he did not look good. He was indecisive. He didn't hit a couple of holes that were there, and he slipped a couple of times. And he did not play a good game. Of course, he had that costly fumble late, his first fumble of the year. But a running back is only as good as their offensive line. And going back to that Eagles offensive line, which we talked about earlier, which was revered in the city and across the league, this offensive line this year has stunk. And that has shocked me. I'm sure it surprised everybody because of the names and the talent up front. They have been a major disappointment. High-priced players playing like crap. And what gives you an example of an offensive line not performing well is yards before contact. Last season, Saquon Barkley, the best among running backs in yards before contact at 3.8. Through week 12 for the Eagles, his yards before contact is 2.3. That is down a full yard and a half from last year. The league average is 2.4. So the Eagles are below league average in yards before contact. That should not happen with this offensive line. Last season, yards before contact total, Saquon, 1,311 of his 2,005 yards were before contact. This year, he only has 684 rushing yards. 426 of them are before contact. And a lot of people want to say that against the Dallas Cowboys, Saquon sucked. Look, he didn't play a great game, but his yards before contact against the Cowboys, -1. So what this number shows you is what we've seen all year long when you watch games or when you look at the tape, that when Saquon gets a carry, there is nowhere to go. Why is that? Because this Eagles offensive line, which last year played bully ball and they were a mauling unit, are now getting steamrolled, and they're the ones getting bullied and beat, leading to this defensive lineman winning their one-on-ones, getting past these Eagles offensive linemen and making their way to Saquon Barkley for TFLs and negative plays or runs that go nowhere and have no chance of working right from the start. And I saw this number on Jordan Mailata, who last year was a second-team All-Pro. There were 13 pass plays on Sunday against the Cowboys in which the Eagles chipped to help Jordan Mailata. You know what that means? That means that the Eagles were not confident that Jordan Mailata would be able to hold up in his one-on-ones. So it's incredibly disappointing to see this offensive line play so poorly, and it's killing the offense running it and throwing it. Eagles miss Mekhi Becton. I think they should have re-signed him. Cam Jurgens, Landon Dickerson, they've played awful, haven't been healthy all year. Now the Eagles are without Lane Johnson. Fred Johnson has done an admirable job of filling in the past, but last week, couple of really costly penalties and wasn't good. And Jordan Mailata has not been the same guy as far as his play, and he's been whistled for so many penalties this season. And where this has really hurt the Eagles is in a situation like we saw play out before our very eyes on Sunday against the Cowboys, where the Eagles go up 21-0. But I was even saying this when the Eagles went up 21-0. They couldn't run the ball. And then they take that 3-touchdown lead. What is a way to wear an opponent down? You win time of possession, you run the ball, you eat clock, you limit the opportunities for the opposing offense to get the ball and score points to come back, and you run the football successfully to make that defense play a lot of snaps, and then by the end of the game, they end up breaking mentally and physically. That's what the Eagles did last year. But this year, that has been missing. And last year, we saw the Eagles' offensive line be able to control games late, and the Eagles would take these leads, then they'd run it with Saquon. And then they'd pop these explosive plays, and they'd be able to extend on their lead. What could the Eagles not do against Dallas on Sunday? They went up 21-0. They did not score the final 41 minutes of the game. That's not going to fly against the high-scoring Chicago Bears offense and an aggressive head coach in Ben Johnson, which is why it's so important for this Eagles team to find success, find a reason, find a why and a how for why the run game struggles have happened, and find a way to correct it. And an underrated person that the Eagles have missed this year is TJ Paganetti, who was the Eagles run game coordinator last year under Jeff Stoutland. He designed parts of this running offense. He is now with Kellen Moore with the New Orleans Saints. And the Eagles, I think, are missing his young, creative influence. And this is shocking to say because this guy's become folklore and a legend in the city of Philadelphia. But it's time to hold this coach accountable as well. Offensive line coach Jeff Stoutland needs to do a better job. His players are not executing. His players are not playing well. And his players are committing a ton of penalties. Which brings me to this, because these penalties have certainly killed this offensive line. When Nick Sirianni is a CEO head coach and he doesn't call plays, he has to create a culture and sustain it. He has to have great player relationships. He has to manage the game, and he has to make sure that his teams are always buttoned up and detail-oriented. And Nick Sirianni's saying, which was Saquon Barkley's favorite phrase last year, which was on and is on the Eagles Super Bowl ring, tough, detailed together. The Eagles offensive line has not played tough this year. The Eagles as a team have not been detailed. Sirianni also likes to say, master the things that take no talent. Eagles have not been mastering the things that take no talent. They have been sloppy. They have been undisciplined. And they have been one of the most oft penalized injured teams, or oft penalized teams in the National Football League. And it needs to get corrected. And that was a huge problem against the Dallas Cowboys. 14 penalties against Dallas for 96 yards. Hard to believe. And this has also been a season-long problem. Check out these numbers. Penalties by game for the Eagles starting in week 1. 9, 6, 5, 8, 9, 4, 8, 5, 7, 9, 14. There has only been One game this year where the Eagles have been penalized less than 5 times. There have been 6 games this year where the Eagles have had 8 or more penalties. Last season, Philadelphia had 8 or more penalties only 4 times in 17 games. Already this season, as they've played 11 games, they have 6 games with 8+ penalties. They are 26th in the NFL in penalties with 81. They are 27th in the NFL in penalty yardage with 721. Their penalty differential is minus 20. That's 31st. Their yardage differential as far as penalties, minus 156, meaning they're committing a lot more penalties than the opposition. That's 29th. And their pre-snap penalties, 31. 31 pre-snap penalties. That's 25th. This is bad. It needs to be cleaned up. It better be cleaned up against the Chicago Bears. Otherwise, the Boo Birds are going to be out on Friday, on Black Friday, against Chicago. And one thing that is head-scratching and infuriating is that a lot of these penalties are avoidable. A lot of these penalties are procedural penalties on this Eagles team. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. My name is Chase Sr. Always appreciate all of your support. Give me a follow on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Chase_Sr. Just launched that TikTok, so give me a follow over there.